Hi, everyone, and thank you very much for Tony Stanol joining us. This is another episode of One Take because life has no rehearsals. So, Tony and I have known each other for, I don't know, decades. He allowed me to say decades. He didn't want to say how many.
It's true.
But we gained a lot of weight in those decades because we relaunched Navisco in Latin
Mm,
America. And I remember I gained 22 pounds just testing Oreos all over
wow.
the world.
Wow.
So that was a good decade. And now Tony is president of GRN Global Recruiters Network in Sarasota. He is on the other side of this today. And well, thank you very much, Tony, for joining us. It's a thrill.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Marcelo. It's always exciting to talk to you. We're never at a loss for conversation. That's for sure.
That's for sure. So, Tony, and I always ask people, because we've all gone through that, and most of the defining moments in our lives, we don't know that they're happening as they're happening. And
Mm.
there's even I don't know, some kind of theater play about it. I can't remember what it is, but like somebody says, "Are we having fun yet?" And the person says, "After we have fun, we'll know." So tell me about you. You've had like two completely interesting careers in
Mhm.
advertising and now in recruitment. But what defined the modern Tony Stanol professionally? What was that moment that changed you?
I'll have to go back to college for this one, because I thought I wanted to be a copywriter. I was always attracted to advertising, but it really kind of galvanized. It really gelled when this one professor of marketing named Lee Adler, great guy, was talking to us about marketing and positioning brands and so forth. And he said this. He said, "You're not selling a quarter-inch drill bit, that drills into what? It's not a quarter-inch drill bit. You're selling a quarter-inch hole." And I was like, "Whoa!" And it kind of like it all kind of snapped into focus for me. Like, very interesting. I love psychology. I love the way people think, and I love the way marketing works. And that was the defining moment that said, "Yeah, I really want to get into this business." And he helped me get an internship in New York during my junior year of after my junior year in undergraduate. This is Fairleigh Dickinson in New Jersey, which does a lot of polling these days. I've learned to find out, but that got my foot in the door in advertising, and the rest is history.
And a lot of it will probably remain unrevealed or something. I'm so glad in that history nobody had hand cameras because man, that was a wild time. So talking about wild times because we've been through it. I mean, like I don't know. On the personal side, I went through all of the different cycles of television. Okay, well, this,
Mm,
that, streaming, that, and you yourself have gone through many different industries, but there's always something that catches us by surprise. Something that, in looking back, we say, "Damn." In 1,000 years, I would have never guessed that would change.
mm.
What was that in your case?
Wow. I thought when I joined an agency and, moved to maybe another agency a few years later, that I'd always work in the advertising industry on the, account management or strategy side. Um, and I thought I'd retire, if from an agency somewhere, New York or elsewhere. That didn't happen. Right about when I was knocking on the door of 50, I got bounced a couple of times. And it was the first time in my life that I ever got laid off from a job, from an advertising job. And of course, I didn't feel it was my fault. It was, and it wasn't because of a lost account or anything. I was tied to, someone who brought me in who was fired, and I had to leave with her. And then there are a couple of owner founders of some smaller agencies that, we didn't see eye to eye. And after three rounds of this, three times getting bounced, I invoked the three strike rule that I've got to do something different now. And I still had daughters with cell phones and cars. I still needed to make money. So I decided I have to change jobs. I have to do something completely different, which got me into the recruiting side of the business, albeit in advertising, but it's clearly, like you said, the other side of the desk. I'm now an executive recruiter calling on agencies, talking to agencies, putting people into advertising. We got trained into the art and science of recruiting. So the recruiting network I belong to said, you could recruit in any field you want to. You have a passion in, sportswear or electronics, you could do that. And I said, no, my love has always been advertising. So I'd like to recruit in advertising. That's why I stayed there. But clearly it's a different career. I saw some stat recently that said people will have 5 to 7 different careers in their lifetimes.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
yeah, this is my second, but I think in the 50s and 60s and 70s, people thought they'd stay with one job, whether it's General Electric or Procter and Gamble, retire for the golden watch, and that's it. But not anymore. Our children will go through several different careers, and I'm on my second. I don't know if there'll be a third. We'll see what happens.
But that is super interesting. I hadn't, well, that's a depressing thought that you have to work, you in your case, 5 more careers.
I don't
Wow.
think I don't think it's a mandatory. I think it's sort of like
Can you imagine? I mean, that's a horrible thought.
oh no,
All that work. I just want to retire and drink beer or wine and eat tapas in Spain or
yeah,
something.
man.
But talking about those careers, because it is not only the change in the career that is astounding. From my point of view, as an agency guy, and I've been an agency guy really all of my life, I've always worked on the agency side. The agency business also changed radically.
Mm,
In my case, one of the big things that I have noticed, the agency as an entity also changed tremendously, and it just kind of fragmented. So now we have people that have agencies, but other people say, "Oh, I'm in marketing," but all they do is, like, I don't know, SEO
yeah.
or influencers. How did you cope with that? How did you change GRN or your GRN to begin coping with what I see as the fragmentation of the advertising industry?
Well, as a student of the business, I'm fascinated by this change. I think that there was a big milestone in the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, where a lot of people were laid off in the industry. A lot of people were on the street. And coincidentally, I started my recruiting business then, and I was, kind of naive at the time, and kind of didn't really know what I was doing at first, but was pretty successful at it. I was rookie of the year for our network, my first year in the business, but the industry was in shambles. A lot of people were on the street, people were laid off, and when it started to come back, things had changed, and it had to do with measurement and digital marketing and
Right.
and return on investment. And clients were demanding much more of agencies from then on because they could measure things. And it became much more of an ROI world. What have you done for me lately, agency? When we did Oreo campaigns, 20, 25 years ago, and, broke a new campaign or a new flight of advertising and sales went up, we would try to take credit for that. But we really didn't know if it was the advertising or if it was the coupon that dropped on Sunday.
Right.
But now things are so much more measurable. And I think that caused procurement to start to batten down the hatches with agencies and really squeeze the industry, and not for the better. Everyone was being asked to do more with less from then on, and it was terrible. I feel bad about accepting my exorbitant fee sometime for putting someone into advertising because it's tough out there. and people are having job job openings next to them, and having to do the job of two people, and it's really difficult. But um, for me, the fragmentation is interesting because I'll go where the business is, all things advertising from director level to C-suite, whether it's an SEO agency, full service agency, multicultural agency, you name it. We've worked in all of them, and anywhere on the org chart. So I'm always intrigued by new roles that are created. Like the performance marketing has been all the buzz, and now there seems to be a pendulum swinging in the other direction for more creativity and individual human contribution. So as things change, you kind of have to evolve with it. And as a cheerleader for the business, it breaks my heart to see people bailing out of the industry or being forced out because it's so difficult.
Let's talk. And okay, so let's grab a hot potato right there. I have, and you and I know both, Gene, Brian. So, I'm very interested in a sort of offhand way now in the U.S. Hispanic market. And it went from multicultural. Gene was one of the driving forces to say, let's call it Hispanic because we're not multicultural. I mean, like we don't have a
Mhm.
lot of cultures; we have two of them. So, that kind of thing. Now, I thought I've had a ongoing argument, let's say, not fight, argument, with a lot of Hispanic agencies saying, you guys missed the boat. Because at some point, you could have made the case that a lot of what are now only Hispanic agencies
Mhm.
could have been essentially highly targeted, segmentable, like micro segmentation agencies. And they could have been anything they wanted. They could have said the same way we target Hispanics, we could target, I don't know, rich white guys with yachts.
Mhm.
It's the same thing, it's the same discipline, right? So, what's your impression? Because you are right at the forefront of that. I mean, you're one of the most respected executive recruiters for the Hispanic agencies. You have a name, you do have a brand. What's your take on that?
You know, that too is fascinating. I see, how a lot of the mainstay agencies that were around, say, 20 years ago are now gone, like Bromley, or just, shells of their former selves. And then some others like the Community and Alma are thriving. They're doing very well, thank you very much. But in terms of you know, I ran client services at La Agencia de Orsi, back in '04 and '05.
I remember very well.
And at the time we were trotted out a presentation called Hispanic 101 to educate clients on the Hispanic market and facts and figures and growth and the opportunity. That same conversation is happening today,
I
which
know.
which astounds me. We haven't gotten beyond that. Maybe it's because clients are thick and they don't get it or what have you. But I'm amazed by that in particular. And one big Hispanic or multicultural agency I worked with about over the past 10 years is now gone. But I won't name the name, but it rhymes with Noble View. That agency had Hispanic, African American, and Asian resources, and people dedicated to those targets. And I thought, total market, these guys should capture the essence of total market because they can do it all and get into general market that way. And I tried to talk to them about that, but the owner was not listening, and he needed a new operating team and executive team, just wouldn't have it. And then they lost the Verizon account, and now they're gone. It was such a shame. It was so obvious to some of us, at least to me at the time, that they could have owned the total market conversation. But now we're still kicking around claiming that we're multicultural agencies, but most of our work is general market. It's still Spanish language for the most part.
But like
So
you, I am astounded at it's the same conversation.
yeah, yeah.
I read, the LinkedIn page for HMC, and it is exactly the same conversation. It's very strange. I tell them that they also should go from just talking about it to actually showing it. Just do some research, go over to some guy and say, listen, you did this and then that happened.
Yeah, yeah.
Then you did Hispanic and then we had this happen. Like just prove it with numbers.
Hmm.
So, it's, I don't know. I had to bring it up because it is one of the most
Yeah,
interesting
it is.
things, like you keep having the same conversation over and over and over, and nobody realizes this might be the definition of madness. You know,
I,
Nothing changes.
I remember looking at, I had up on my wall a Marketing y Medios magazine at the time in '05. And Manny Vidal was on the cover because he was winning every new business pitch that he touched. And I
I
thought, oh,
remember him.
we're going to get you, Manny. And it never really did. But, I did the math at the time because I really came from General Market, J. Walter Thompson, and FCB and BBDO in New York to this Hispanic agency. And I saw, oh my God, look at this untapped opportunity. The numbers bear it out. There's, the proportional size of the population compared to the spend is just like out of sync, and this market's going to explode, but it really hasn't. It's just kind of clipped along and maintained. And anyway, it's always a head scratcher. I talk to anyone who is
Yeah,
in that industry about why not? Why hasn't it
exactly.
exploded?
Why not?
Yeah,
There was a lot of quality people in there. So
yeah.
I don't know. It's one of those, in Spanish, we call it asignatura pendiente, like a pending assignment, like something you have to one of these days
Uh,
approach.
right.
So tell me, well, you're on that side of the desk. So
Hmm.
this conversation, I'm sure you've had this conversation a lot. You're advising a CEO or a CMO or something like that, some guy or some woman high up there, some person high up there who can make a decision, is going to make a decision about recruitment. That person is going to choose person A, B, C, or D. What would you tell that hiring person, that CEO or the CMO, about candidates who are, say, 55 plus, of which
Hmm.
all of us are?
Yeah, see, that's a tough one because I'm motivated by making the placement, and sometimes agencies don't want to hear about someone that's maybe not in their line of sight. I'll get specs, and this is sort of like the kind of hidden ageism, if you will, where they're looking for someone with 12 to 15 years of experience. Do the math on that. You're talking someone in their early 30s, with a lot of energy, an up and comer, or a diamond in the rough. And when it comes to salary, well, a lower salary. Well, that doesn't work for a lot of people who have 20, 30 years in the business,
Yep.
and nor would they qualify with those specs. So it's really, I'm torn between, making a sale, as it were, and putting the right person in there who I think could really do the job. And every once in a while, I'll present a candidate who is over 50 or of a certain age, and I don't hear. I've never heard directly that person's too old, or that guy's tired, or what have you. But the issues is danced around. It's well, this person doesn't have that, or I like this other one better because of this experience or that. So it's tough to get your arms around when you're on this side of the desk.
Have you ever convinced one of those CEOs or CMOs to hire somebody older? And if you did, what did you tell that person?
You know, I did. And in fact, it was someone you and I both know we've worked with. He was a strategist in the international team I was heading up. And it wasn't me. It was someone who worked for me in in my office in Calabasas, who was an executive recruiter who had the assignment with one of the IPG offices in San Francisco, and placed him up there. And I thought, good on you. Someone who's senior gets another shot, and he did really well for a couple of years, and then moved on and did something else, and now he's still working, and God bless him. He's one of the few guys I know who are still in the mainstream advertising industry, who are colleagues of ours, cohorts.
That's great. I'm glad for the person. I have no clue, of course, and we're
Yeah,
not going to reveal anything, but
no, no, no names.
I am absolutely glad for that person. So, anyway, thank you very much, Tony. I really appreciate it. It's always a thrill speaking with you. Um, it brings back all memories, but at the same time, it also brings, like a future path. I mean, like you're there, you're still building things. Uh, it's great. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And then, we'll see you in the industry.
Yeah, thanks, Marcella. Thanks for the opportunity, and I love what you're doing here. So, have a good day.
Thank you. We love it. Thank you very much.